Okay, great. This is a very creative way that we're doing this. I'm grateful for Ashley to be able to pull together the Zoom and the live and the virtual and everything that's going on together. So I'm hoping everybody on the screen can see the big screen over here. We're here together and we're ready to take a wild journey through Jewish meditation, all right? I'm Rabbi Vigler. David is my first name, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you for joining me here today. For the next 90 minutes, we're going to take a beautiful journey through Jewish meditation. You ready to go? Good, fantastic. Welcome. Thank you very much, everybody. Great. Chuck, did I say hello to you? I think I did, right? Of course, right? Fantastic. Hi, Sandy. How's it going? Great. So they tell a story of an American woman, a Jewish woman who goes to the Far East. She goes to the Himalayas. She climbs the mountains over there in Tibet. You know, there's a Chabad in Kathmandu. Did you know that?
I've been there.
You've been there.
Yes.
They got this huge Passover Seder with like 3,000 Israeli backpackers. It's unbelievable. So this American woman, she travels over there, Jewish woman, she goes to the Himalayas and she goes Kathmandu, and then she takes an ox cart up to a certain place, and she takes the Sherpas, carry her up to, she's looking for a certain guru, and they say to her, you can't talk to that guru because he's very, very holy. And he's very transcendent, and he doesn't have conversation with ordinary mortals. So you can't really talk to him. I have to talk to him. I have to talk to that one. But he's up in the cave. He's meditating. You can only get there through 6 days of hazardous travel. Don't worry. I'll do whatever it takes to talk to him. Eventually, she gets up there with who knows what kind of guidance. The Sherpas are guiding her up the mountain. She finally gets to the cave, and they warn her, you're only allowed to say 8 words. You're only allowed to say 8 words to the guru because he's very, very transcendent and very holy. He doesn't engage in mundane conversation. When she finally gets to him, she says, Sheldon, it's your mother. Enough already, come home. So Jewish people, you know, it's not even so funny. It's true. This is a real story. This is a real story. We recently had a story of a priest in Poland who had survived the Holocaust and the monastery. And at the end of his life, he came back to Israel as a Jew, and he recognized his roots. Many of these gurus are Jewish people that are seeking, genuinely seeking more depth, something more meaningful. Because the Yiddishkeit that they've been taught, sadly, is a lot more about masquerades on Purim and donuts on Hanukkah than it is about anything sophisticated, transcendent, deep, or meditative. This course, Meditation from Sinai, is about Jewish meditation. Hi, Nancy, how you doing? It's about Jewish meditation, which is very different to other forms of meditation in the sense that it's not, unlike other meditations that are about emptying your mind, Jewish meditation is about filling it up. It's content-based, using our minds not to escape this world, but to truly experience it on a whole new, deeper level of experience. Each session of the next 6 sessions, starting today, will have a unique meditation as part of the session. We'll be using the mind, not avoiding the mind in order to meditate. And each session will be a hybrid of academic study together with meditative practice. All right? I'd like to start off by asking you, how does meditation look to you? If you had to draw a picture of meditation, what would you draw in your picture? And of course, anybody that's with us here on Zoom, please let us know if you want to say something. I'm not sure if I can hear you on Zoom. Can somebody on Zoom say something? Because I can't tell if... Oh, yeah, you probably have to unmute your mic if you want to say something on Zoom. Marlene, yes, what would you describe as meditation? What does it look like?
To me, I have done traditional meditation.
Okay.
Where I emptied my mind. And at some point, I was very good at it, and I would meditate 3 times a week for about an hour with my yogi.
Okay.
And I would say that at one point I had like an out of body experience. So I would say that it was very peaceful and very, very spiritual.
So you've experienced meditation on your own with a yogi. Okay, great. But I mean, you're a little advanced right now. But I mean, if you had to describe a picture, like what is, the Google images of meditation look like? Nancy?
Someone sitting quietly, maybe pose with the serene expression on their face and not moving.
Is the lotus position necessary?
No.
Is that part of it? Not necessary. It adds for effect.
It just be, quiet.
Quiet. I like that.
Not moving.
I like that. So what about Einstein? Does Einstein look like a meditation paradigm? Does, Michelangelo, any great thinkers, the great thinkers of today, Leonardo DiCaprio? I mean, is that any form of meditation at all? You see, I believe that meditation is often overrated in the sense that we think that you have to buy yourself a ticket to go to a mountaintop in the Far East in order to be able to reach a sufficient altitude to be able to meditate. Whereas I love what you said, Nancy. Very simple. You don't have to have a yogi necessarily. I mean, it's good if you do, but you don't have to. You're able to meditate by just quiet. Just stop. You don't have to do anything to meditate. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just stop. And indeed, Webster's defines meditation as engage in contemplation or reflection. It comes from the Latin meditare, which means to measure, to think, to contemplate, devise, or ponder. To meditate means focused thinking. That's it. It just means focused thinking. We actually do it already all of the time. We already do it all the time. When you find yourself daydreaming about your next vacation, daydreaming about some problem that you have that's irking you, or sulking about something that somebody said, planning what you're going to say to someone, that's meditating. It's focused thinking. The key is, the chap, is to be able to learn. Our goal is to be able to be proactive in our meditation instead of just reactive to say, oh, I guess I just thought about that or this or the other. If we were able to control our thought processes, to be able to control our meditation, that would be something very, very beneficial, as we're about to discover today in this extraordinary discovery, which we're going to do today, to learn about the extraordinary effects of focused thinking of meditation, not only on your own emotions, but more importantly, more dramatically, in a more exciting way, how our thoughts can actually change the reality around us. And now that's a deep concept. Sandy, you and I have spoken about this with Iris, right? About how our thoughts are able to change what actually happens to us. It's very exciting. It's coming up in a few minutes. So before we even get started, I'd like to ask you, how is meditation and Judaism the same? How can Jews talk about meditation? You'd think, Marlene, that meditation is something which belongs to the yogis, it belongs to the Indians or the gurus or the Hindus or some Far Eastern culture. Where do Jews fit into this whole meditation thing? Were you surprised when you saw Chabad advertising meditation? You were surprised, taken aback, right? Somebody asked me and said, they never told me meditation in Hebrew school. Like, why is this Jewish? Well, welcome to Chabad. This is Judaism 2.0. You see, there absolutely is a powerful Jewish precedent for meditation, and it precedes the Far Eastern cultures. You see, our forefathers, the patriarchs, they meditated regularly. Let's take a look at what they did. If you could open up your textbook on page 3, please. We'll take a look at this beautiful quote about our forefathers' preoccupation or occupation, which was, they were shepherds. They weren't accountants. They weren't in finance. They weren't in insurance. They were shepherds. Let's take a look at why they were all shepherds. The anomaly, the one who broke rank was Joseph. You know the story of Joseph? Joseph becomes prime minister of Egypt, and his brothers couldn't swallow that pill. They couldn't understand how their brother became such a renegade that he became a politician. What's wrong with a family business? We're all shepherds. You have to make yourself you're head of a whole country now. Like seriously, what's wrong with you, right? Let's take a look. Text number 3, it's page 3, text 1. The patriarchs chose to be shepherds so that they could be alone in the wilderness, where the air is clean and pure, and they would be far away from other people, for the sake of secluding themselves in divine meditation. This is the reason why our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were shepherds. Now, this predates the Eastern meditation traditions, which date back to India, 1500 BCE. You know, Abraham lived in the year 1812 BCE, which is 300 years before the Eastern religions. Not to say, we're not trying to take credit here. We're not Jews trying to take credit for inventing meditation per se, but just to be able to put things in perspective. That instead of thinking that Jewish meditation or any conversation of Jewish meditation is somehow a reaction to other groups or other traditions that were involved in meditation, actually we've been doing this for a very, very long time as well. And it's not just our forefathers. It's something which is fundamental to our Jewish tradition. You know, prayer is a biblical commandment. It's something that we Jews do 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening, at least. And we do it 4 times on a Jewish holiday. On Yom Kippur is the only time of year where we actually have 5 services. You know, we do the Ne'ilah. We add Ne'ilah, which is right at the very end before the fast, before the breaking of the fast. What does prayer actually mean? Have you wondered, we Jews are obsessed with prayer. What are we busy doing with prayer? Judith, you look like somebody's very... What do you think we're doing in prayer?
I keep thinking about Label Wolf.
Well, you're going to meet him in a few minutes. What does he say? No?
Well, I took his online course.
A few weeks ago, right? Okay.
And when you asked the first question about meditation, I can only say that entire week after that first course, I never felt so good.
Amazing. Well, wait till what happens right after this. What Judith is talking about is that a few weeks ago, as an appetizer to this course, we had a 2-session Zoom with Label Wolf, who's a famed Australian Kabbalist from Australia, right? And we had 2 sessions with him, and Judith is giving that beautiful feedback. That's really, really nice to hear. But specifically prayer. What is, Jews today have a very hard time connecting with prayer. If you think about that, Jews today have a very hard time connecting with prayer, which is why the synagogues aren't exactly overflowing for daily services, if you know what I'm saying, right? Why is that? Because people have the false conception, the misconception, that prayer is about asking God for stuff. I have to go pray so that God will give me A, B, and C. And you know what? If God didn't give it to me when I asked him last week, then he's either ineffective or he can't remember, either of which doesn't give me much confidence in this guy, right? But really, let's analyze for a moment, what does prayer mean? The Hebrew word for prayer is tefillah, T-E-F-I-L-A, tefillah. And like any Hebrew word, it's got some very powerful etymological sources. When you break down the Hebrew word tefillah, it breaks down into the following. You'll see it on page 4, text figure 1.1. If you look at this figure 1.1, you'll see that there's 2 definitions to the root of the word tefillah. One of them, the one on the left, if one commits a crime against another, he will be judged by a judge. The word tefillah means to judge. What does it mean to judge? This is what prayer means. What happens when a judge judges? We have a judge here, Lynn, right? When a judge judges, they have to take into consideration all sorts of conflicting views. Well, he said, she said, this one, that one, the other one, and you've got to come to a calibrated conclusion. That's one of 2 meanings of the word prayer, which is an introspective exercise of self-judgment. What you've got to do is you've got to calibrate between all the conflicting views of your cognitive dissonance, the conflict between what you see with your eyes and what you sense with your mind, and being able to put it together. That's a meditation experience right there. A second meaning of the word prayer, you'll see it on the right side here of this figure 1.1, is one who glues an earthenware vessel. It's basically somebody who molds earthenware vessel. You know, when you make pottery, you gotta like spin it on that wheel, and you put your finger in, and you model. You make like a little lip, or you make a little, whatever you do to mold the clay. As the clay spins around the wheel, the purpose of the tofel of the molder is to be able to give it its shape and its form. What we're doing in prayer, just like the molder, or he has a name, the potter, just like the potter takes clay and makes it into a beautiful, functional vessel, earthenware into beautiful, functional, like a Lennox, so too, we take our earthenware vessel, which is our body, which is made of, man comes from earth, we come from the dust, right? And we take this body and we turn it into a beautiful, functional vessel to be able to have a relationship with the divine. That is the purpose of prayer, to be able to think our way through the weeds, to get out of the swamp, and to be able to establish a meaningful and deep relationship with our maker, with our spirituality. So both of these explanations bridge the cognitive dissonance between the visions of our eye and the perceptions of our minds through meditation. That is what prayer is all about. And this is the reason why prayer is actually called, in Kabbalistic sources, it's called avodat hatfilah, which means the work, the labor of prayer. Prayer is not just something which you do with your lips. It's something that you do with your heart and your mind. The early Hasidim, the Talmud tells us something fascinating about them. Take a look at page number 5, how we're supposed to approach prayer. Text number 2, page 5 says, we must approach prayer with reverence. The early Hasidim, the early pious sages, would pause in thought for 1 hour so that they could focus their hearts on God, and only then would they pray. This is what Jewish prayer looks like. It's not the kind of thing that you say, okay, we start at 5:15, we'll be out the door by 5:30, and Kiddush will be served. Fantastic. That's a very, very shallow application of prayer. Prayer is about calibrating the dissonance between our body and our soul, much like you would do to your car. When your car is driven 5,000 miles or 6 months, you want to bring it into the shop so that they can calibrate it, that the wheels and the engine and everything else is all working in tandem in the proper way. So too with prayer, we want to make sure that our body and our soul, that our minds and our hearts are calibrated with what's going on in the perceptions around us. You read about an attack in a temple in Texas. You read about some other crime or crisis that's going on in the world, and it challenges your faith. Prayer is that opportunity to mold the clay, to come to a judgment, like a judge who's making that decision, to be able to meditate your way to stability. It's an inner cognitive and emotional experience. It's interestingly, by the way, this is why when we daven, we actually have a mechitza separating the man from the woman. Have you ever wondered about this? You ever wondered why when traditional shuls have a separation between the men and the woman? So one explanation, what was that?
I said no.
You don't know why, right?
I know why.
Oh, you do know why?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know. You don't wonder because you do know. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So one reason which you probably don't know, unless you've heard it from me before, is that the reason we have a mechitza, separation in the synagogue, is because it's customary during the service for the rabbi to give a sermon. And it's customary during the sermon for the congregation to fall asleep. And we can't afford the man and the woman sleeping together inside the sanctuary. Maybe that reason you might not have heard from me.
I did.
That one you did. Good, okay. But the real reason for the mechitza, the real reason for the separation between the man and the woman, is because the origin of prayer, the biblical origin of prayer, is da et Elokei avicha ve'avdeu b'leiv shalem. You shall have an intimate and personal relationship with God. That is the obligation of prayer, to have an intimate and personal relationship with God. Now, when you're sitting with someone else that you love, two's company, but three's a crowd. It's difficult to have an intimate conversation when you're three people. But when it's me and God alone, that's what allows for the intimate bond, which is the intimacy, the meditation of prayer. When you're surrounded by your lover, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, it becomes a conflict of attachments. I'm attached to my girlfriend, I'm attached to my God, it becomes more complicated. It's because the essence of prayer is about an intimate, personal connection, which we do through meditation. That's the reason why we have the Mechitzah. In fact, the meaning of the word Chabad is not a denomination of Judaism. Chabad actually is an acronym, as we're soon about to learn, for the three intellectual processes of our soul. The Ch stands for Chachma, which means idea. The B stands for Bina, which means understanding. And the D stands for Das, which means feeling in our hearts. Chabad means to go from idea to understanding to feeling in your heart what you've already understood in your mind. The way that we go through this process from idea to understanding is by learning about the idea. But to go from understanding to feeling, you need meditation in order to be able to reach a state of feeling in your heart. In order to be cognitive, in order to be conscious, in order to be Chabad, you need to go through the process of meditation. And that's, my friends, the reason why meditation is something which is organically Jewish, even though we might not have learned it in Hebrew school. It could be that our parents and grandparents and teachers and cheder teachers, maybe they didn't really know how to teach it to us. But meditation is certainly something that our forefathers have been exercising for 3,800 years. It's something that we Jews have been doing through prayer 3 times a day for that amount of years as well. And it's something that we at Chabad is fundamental, foundational to our own spirituality and our own consciousness, is the ability to meditate upon the ideas that we learn. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But just one more introduction is that from a Jewish perspective, when we talk about meditation, there's actually 3 different kinds of meditations. And they are, number one is the treif kind. You know what treif means? The non-kosher kind. There's a non-kosher kind of meditation, which means this is the meditation that comes out of idolatrous practices, where they offer incense and there's all sorts of deities that need to be mentioned. Those are one form of meditation that we're not going to. Can't encourage you enough to steer away from those for various obvious spiritual reasons, but that's one kind. Then there's a second kind of meditation, which is the neutral kind of meditation. Those are nothing to do with idol worship, nothing to do with other gods or other religions. They're just purely human thinking processes. And the third kind is the organically Jewish ones, which are founded in Torah, founded in Judaism, and those are the ones that we're going to be talking about throughout this course. In fact, in Torah, I'm going to map it out for you in just a moment, but in Torah, there's actually 3 different kinds of kosher meditations. So we have 3 different meditations in general, but when it comes to specifics, there's 3 kinds of kosher meditations, and they're like this. The first one is called hitbodedut. It's on the screen. Hitbodedut, or hitbodedut, means seclusion. If you ever met the Breslover Hasidim, anybody heard of the Breslover Hasidim? If you go to Israel, these are the very, very happy guys. They're constantly jumping out of their cars and dancing at red lights and all sorts of interesting, unexpected occasions. You ever heard of these guys, Sandy, the Breslover Hasidim? Yeah. So these guys are very much prone to going out into the woods, seclusion. There they'll meditate all on their own for hours and hours on end. That's one form of meditation, which is really transcendent meditation. It's about getting away from all the noise, from the cacophony, and getting into your own little cocoon. A second form of meditation is called hisbainanus, which means contemplation. That's not about escapism as much as it is about a deeper understanding of what actually is that you're engaging with. So you're not running away from the world. You're in the city. You're meditating on your problems. You're not running away from your problems as in transcendence. But what you're doing is that you're contemplating the depth behind your problem, right? There's a big, very important difference there. And finally, the third kind is kavana, which means mindfulness. which is an intentional meditation that relates to our daily grind, the daily experience that we do that will infuse it with more meaning and with more purpose. It's living mindfully, okay? In this course, in the next 6 sessions, we're going to be covering all of these topics. In today's session, we'll be talking about mind control exercises to overcome negative feelings and to create actual positive outcomes in the world around us, to make good things happen to us as a result of the way that we think. Next week, we'll be using meditation as a tool to experience our spirituality. This is the one session that we'll be dedicating to Hisbodedus, which is the transcendent form of meditation. Then in lesson 3, we'll be talking about mindfulness, which is being fully present in the moment. And that is playing on the second and third forms of meditation, the Hisbodedus, contemplation, together with Kavanah, mindfulness. In lesson 4, we'll be talking about practical meditations, imbuing every day with purpose and meaning. Again, that's the second and third kind, contemplation and mindfulness. In lesson 5, we'll be focusing on contemplation with awareness of the divine that can lead to joy, resilience, and purpose. And finally, in lesson 6, we'll be talking fully about mindfulness in active meditations, okay? And that's where we're headed in this course. But let's get straight into it right now. The Jewish relaxation response. Now, while the aim of Jewish meditation in general is to reach higher consciousness, a great side benefit that we're going to focus on today is overcoming negative emotion. You know, when you're feeling lousy, you're feeling negative, you just verklempt. How can you break out of it? I'd like you to turn, please, to page 7, exercise 1.3. I'd like you, please, to record a negative experience that you had in the past month. Please don't share it. Just think about a negative experience that you had in the past month and describe to yourself the personal impact that resulted from the negative feelings this experience created. So think about a negative experience that you've had and how it made you feel. Got it? Nancy, you good? Oh, I love it. You're far ahead of the game. This is fantastic. Good for you. Anybody else struggling to find anything negative? Marty, you can't find one? You do? Oh, you which one is the question? You got to pick one. Okay, great. So for most of us, it's not difficult to find a negative experience and a negative emotion that ensued from that. The question is, how can we be happier? How can we reach a point where we're living lives that are richer, deeper, more meaningful, more conscious, more happy, instead of being the result of an email that sets your day off kilter, or something that someone said to you that was nasty, or stubbing your toe, or slamming your finger in the door that suddenly sent your day into a tailspin? Is there a way for us to be able to remain so elevated, uplifted, and conscious that we can remain joyous throughout it all? Now, there's good news here, because the Torah tells us that we absolutely can control our emotions entirely. Would that be a nice way to live your life? Would you like to live your life in a way that you are fully the master of your emotions? You'd like that, Judy, right? I would love that. How do we do that? The Torah tells us in this next text, number 3, page number 8, that there was a group of people who were the soldiers of the Jewish army, the soldiers of the biblical army. Now, before we read this, I want to ask you a question. If you were called up to battle, or if your child was called up to battle, what kind of emotion would you experience?
Fear.
Fear. Anything else? I think that pretty much sums it up. Fear. Done. Your kid is called up to go to Afghanistan or Iraq or Gaza. The first thing you think about is fear. Take a look at what the biblical approach of the Jewish soldiers was to battle. Page number 8, text number 3. As you approach the battle, the Kohen shall come near and speak to the people. He shall say to them, "Hear Israel, today you are approaching the battle against your enemies. Do not be discouraged, do not be afraid, do not be alarmed or terrified because of them. This is how it worked in a Jewish war. Whenever the Jewish people would go out to battle in a biblical war, a Kohen, a priest, would come up and he'd say, okay, guys, anybody are of the following 4 categories is exempt from the battle. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol neh b'dvarim. If anybody here recently built a home but didn't move in yet, go home. If you recently engaged a woman and you didn't marry her yet, go home. If you planted a vineyard and you didn't taste from it, I guess that means like you opened the bar, but you didn't collect the, you didn't make a profit yet, then you go home. And the 4th one is, if you're afraid, go home. If you are afraid, go home. This is the biblical protocol of Jewish battles. And all those people went home. But the people that stayed behind were not afraid. Now, this is different to John Wayne, who said that courage is not the absence of fear, but being afraid as hell and saddling up anyways. That was John Wayne. The soldiers of King David and the soldiers of Moses were the ones that went out to battle without a shred of fear. How did they do this? If you had to go out to battle, if you had to go to court, would you experience any fear? Would you be able to do that without any shred of fear? Could you be so mindful, so conscious that you can control your entire emotions? How did these guys do it? Clearly, these guys were profound thinkers, meditators, as we're about to learn. So I'd like to ask you, before we go deeper into this, how do you control your negative emotions? Can anyone here share your coping mechanism, how you handle your own negative emotions when they arise?
I cry.
Not for nothing, it's called a catharsis, right? They let it out. It's about letting it out. That's very nice. Good. Judith?
Put it on my friends.
Oh, now that is King Solomon's wisdom, what you just said, Judith. King Solomon says that when you have a problem, talk it out. And he says by talking it out to someone else, you'll feel better. It's like the lady that comes to the rabbi and she tells the rabbi about all of her tsaros. She has so many tsaros, so many headaches that she can't even cope anymore. She can't even keep up, and she's offloading to the rabbi. And eventually, after an hour and a half, she says to the rabbi, Rabbi, you haven't been able to solve my problem, but I'm glad to say that at least my headache has gone away. And the rabbi says, oh no, your headache's not gone away. It's just transferred to me. So that's a good one. You gonna say something, Arnie?
Yeah. When I have negative thoughts, whatever, I always go to my faith and know that God's always there for me. And then I think of what the Rebbetzin says, everything happens. Everything works out at the end. If it hasn't worked out, it's not the end. My faith is my strength and my...
So you turn to your faith. Beautiful. Is it beautiful? Crying, talking, believing. You gonna say something, Nancy?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that I feel there are 2 voices in my head. One is a negative voice and one is a positive voice. And I say to myself, I'm not going to listen to that negative voice. There's got to be another way to think about things or see things. And then I might call you, which I've done before, or I might speak to someone else. Another way to see these things, because I refuse.
So you
to
take
listen to that negative
You
voice.
take a step back
I do.
and you become the judge. You say, okay, I'd like to hear what you have to say. I'd like to hear what you have to say. No commitments here, right? And then you make a decision after that. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So today we're going to learn a simple tool, which connects to some of these ideas about how you can reach what the soldiers of the Bible did, the Jewish soldiers, our ancestors did, how we too can reach zero fear, full control of our emotion, a relatively simple tool. But before we can do that, we have to first get a quick understanding of our human consciousness. We first have to understand how we work, how we tick, what's under the hood. So let's take a look at this idea here on the screen. You have the same figure in your textbook on page 10 as well, what's on the screen. And you'll notice that there's 10 balls on the screen. These are known as the 10 sephiros, the 10 sapphires, so the 10 attributes of expression. You see, God is almighty, and God chose to express himself through these 10 windows of expression. It's a lot like the internet, which is the information superhighway, and you can find everything about everything on the internet, right? But when you pick your windows and you say, okay, I'm going to do a little bookmark on Google, CNN, Facebook, you pick your little apps, right? And those are your windows to the internet. So you have 10 windows to the internet, to this infinite being, or I mean, the internet's not infinite, but theoretically it is, where you're able to connect to any information that you want. So just like you would on your phone, where you have 10 apps that give you access to the internet, so too, God has chosen to engage his infinity with us in this world through these 10 attributes. Generally speaking, they fall into two categories. The first three are chachma, bina, das, which mean intellect, and the last 7 are emotions. So we, by the way, were created in the image of God. What does that mean, that human beings were created in the image of God? It means that just like God chose to express himself through 10 attributes, we also have 10 attributes. That's who we are. They divide into intellectual and emotional. Now, the 3 intellectual we just spoke about earlier are Chabad. Chachma, Bina, Das. You see them on the screen. Chachma, Bina, Das, idea, understanding, and feeling in your heart what you've understood in your mind, right? So those are the 3 steps of intellectual processing of any idea, whether it's Einstein, whether it's trigonometry, whether it's philosophy, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're processing something intellectually, you're going through these 3 steps. Then there are the 7 emotions. 7 emotions, the chesed. There it is. The chesed over here on the right means kindness. Gevura means severity or discipline or strictness. Tiferes is compassion. Netzach is triumph. Hod is humility. Yesod is communication, and Malchus is distance, like aristocracy. So we have these 7 emotional tools of engagement, which make up our entire emotion. Now, Jewish spirituality tells us that as we are all made up of these 10 attributes, intellect and emotion, the reason why it's set up in this particular chart and the way that you see it is because the intellect controls the emotion. Our mind controls our heart. This is fundamental Jewish spirituality. Our mind controls our heart. Let's take a look at this idea in the book of Tanya, page 11, text number 4. The human soul is divided into 2 categories: intelligence and emotion. The intellectual faculties, namely wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, are referred to as the mothers and the source of the emotions, for the emotions are the offspring of the intelligence. This book of Tanya is the foundational text of Chabad philosophy. It is a book all about us. It tells us about who we are and how we function. So the Tanya tells us, based on Jewish spirit mystical sources, that we have within us intellect and emotion, and that our emotion is the child of our intellect. The emotion follows whatever is going on in the intellect. How do you feel about Donald Trump? Don't answer. How do you feel about the vaccine? Don't answer. Think about this for a moment. That your feeling about Trump or the vaccine is based on your understanding of Trump and your understanding of the vaccine. You'll have people that will explain to you how the vaccine is the worst thing that ever happened in the history of mankind. And they really understand this. They're in their understanding. And then you have people that will explain to you why the vaccine is the best thing that ever happened in the world. And I'm not getting political at all, right? So what happens here is that our understanding of these highly controversial lightning rod ideas is what leads automatically to our emotions. You see where I'm going with this? If we're going to try to have any form of control of our emotions, where the paradigm is the soldiers of the Bible, to reach 0 fear, we've got to be able to capture it at the root, at the source. The emotions are fed by the intellect, and as long as we're able to recognize the evolution of our psyche, to realize that our emotions are the children of our understanding of our minds, now we're starting to get a picture, an understanding of how this mechanism works in order to reach Jewish meditation. We're going to say something, Rosin?
Yeah, I want to know what makes one person believe one way if we're made up of the 10, and another person believe the.
So why do people believe different things? Well, we've been given the gift of freedom of choice. Freedom of choice is one of the greatest gifts that mankind has ever known, which is our ability to choose. You can choose to be a fool. You can choose to be a genius. You can choose to be all sorts of things. And thank God for that, because if not, we'd be like factory-produced Ford motor cars where everyone is exactly the same. And I think life would be kind of boring that way. So it's better this way, that we're able to make our own choices and decisions. So now that we understand that we've got this makeup, we've got the intellect and the emotions, it gets a little bit more interesting when the Kabbalah tells us that our soul, made up of intellect and emotion, cannot engage with this world. You see, our soul is spiritual. It's a spiritual being. How do you connect with an idea? I can't connect with an idea. Mozart's Beethoven's Ninth. Give me Beethoven's Ninth. I don't even know how to engage with Beethoven's Ninth. I don't know how to engage with the theory of relativity unless we don one of the three garments of the soul. You see, the soul is made up of intellect and emotions, but just like you couldn't go out into the street without clothing, if you're naked, you're not ready to go out in public. You can't go to a wedding. You can't go anywhere. You can't go out of your front door if you're not wearing clothing. So too, our souls cannot engage with anything outside of themselves unless they have clothing. What is the clothing of the soul? The three garments of the soul are on page 11, figure 1.4, the three soul garments. And they are thought, speech, and action. Thought, speech, and action are the three platforms of engagement of the soul in this physical world. There's only three ways that our soul, intellect and emotion, is able to experience this world. Either you think emotion or think an idea, or you talk it out, or you do it. But without those three garments, you simply cannot give any form of expression to your soul in much the same way that you cannot give expression to your body, which is naked without clothing. Let me give an example. So you got Facebook, right? Let's say you have Facebook. And to our friends on Zoom, it's great to have you all with us. Let's say you have on your phone, you have Facebook, you got WhatsApp, you got Gmail, you've got your various apps, right? Now, where are these apps? Where are they? They're somewhere in the information superhighway. I don't know, think I know.
It's magic.
It's like magic. It's like magic. They're somewhere. I don't know. They're there. But how do I engage with them? Me, little David. How do I connect with them? Well, you need an interface. It's called either a phone, laptop, or desktop, or
Child.
right. You've got your phone, your laptop, your iPad. You've got your desktop. Today, we're not getting connected enough, so they're giving us glasses now, that just in case you might be actually seeing the person that you're talking to, we got to make sure that you've got Facebook like in your eyeballs, right? All the time, right? So you got Google Glass and a Facebook Glass or whatever they call themselves, right? We have those are the tools through which you can connect to this incredible technology called the internet, right? So the phone, the desktop, the laptop, the iPad are the garments which connect us to the technology. In the analog, the technology is the soul. The soul is spiritual. It's intellect and emotion. You can't connect with an idea. How am I going to shake hands with an idea? Unless you don the garment of thought, speech, or action. When you think about it, you do it, you speak about it. Now your soul is finally able to engage. Now, even though we just learned that the mind controls the emotions, it's really the garments of the soul that call the shots. Because, like we said before about Trump and the vaccine, right? Your understanding of the idea is what influences your feeling about it, right? But if you don't engage in the garment of thought, speech, or action, then what are you doing to that intellect? You're just turning it off. We'll talk about this more in a few moments. But before we do that, let me introduce you to Rabbi Leibel Wolf from Melbourne, Australia, who's going to walk us through a brief meditation.
Thoughts produce feelings. Therefore, even a microsecond of thought in any situation produces an emotion. If we have negative emotions, we can simply displace them by replacing them with a new thought. Not a difficult process. And let me share with you a meditation to try to carry out that particular function. So gently close your eyes and just become aware of the flow of your thoughts. What thoughts are flowing through onto the screen of your consciousness? And as you become aware of the thought, see if you can identify a feeling that arises as a consequence of that thought. I would like you to take yourself back to a moment, to a time when you might have been embarrassed, a situation of personal embarrassment. Try to locate that particular incident, refreshing it in your mind. Note all the points that cause the embarrassment. Become aware of the people who are present. And become acutely aware of your feelings of embarrassment at that time. And now let's switch that thought. I want you to think back to a moment when you were supremely happy, ecstatic, somewhere in your life where you felt absolute joy. Recall that moment. Where were you? Who was there? Can you recall the voices, the colors, the background sounds? And now consider, where did that image of embarrassment of a few moments ago disappear? The feelings went away because new thoughts were brought into the consciousness of your mind. Let's try that again. Now think back to a time where you hurt yourself physically, maybe injured yourself, sprained an ankle. Take yourself back there and feel the pain. Simulate it. Recognize how you felt. Even complex feelings beyond the pain. Consequences. And now turn your mind to a birthday party in your honor that you may have experienced as a child, as an adult. What is going on at the party? Who is there? Singing. Maybe a cake. Maybe candles. How do you feel? That same happiness has been recreated. What happened to that feeling of hurt and pain of a few moments ago when you hurt yourself back then? You changed your thoughts, and therefore your feelings changed. Let's learn an important lesson. Moach shalit al halev. The mind determines the outcomes of the emotions. Change your mind, and you change your feelings. When feeling down, depressed, change your thoughts. And in so doing, your whole emotional makeup transforms in the same moment.
Okay. Wow. How did that feel?
Good. Great.
It's amazing when you start to understand how our minds and hearts, how our consciousness operates, that we're suddenly starting to feel empowered. I am not a victim of my next emotional outburst. I can be the master of how I feel because I know that I can control it from the source. Now, it's really not that easy to change our emotion by changing our understanding of the idea. Go explain to the guy who believes that the vaccine is here to kill off mankind, or the other way around. Again, I'm not getting political here because I know it's highly emotional, this topic, right? Go explain to that person why the vaccine is the best thing or the worst thing in the world, the opposite view. Go explain to the conservative that Trump is the worst thing that ever happened, or the other way around. It's not going to happen. It's almost impossible to convince someone out of their convictions, especially if they're such deeply held and passionate convictions. It's very hard to change our emotion. It's very hard to change our understanding, which feeds that emotion. But here's the soul hack that we're going to be learning about today. Whilst you can't change the way you feel and you can't change the way you think, you can't change the way your emotion, you can't change your understanding. You can change what you choose to think about. You can choose to don or divest the garment like a piece of clothing. I wore this suit or that suit today. You can change the garment of your soul. And by doing so, you will literally starve that intellect, which feeds that emotion. By not thinking about something, by not using the garment of thought, by choosing to don or divest that thought, the garment of the soul, you are choking that emotion at its core. Let's take a look at this in the words of the Tanya, page 13, text number 5. The mind naturally controls the heart. Text number 5, page 13. The mind naturally controls the heart. Humans were created from birth with the ability to exercise willpower to control the drives of our hearts so that they not be expressed in our behavior, speech, or thoughts. We are able to divert our attention completely from things our hearts crave to something entirely different. What this means is that if you're desiring something sinful, you're having an emotion for something sinful and prohibited that you're not allowed to engage, you can't change your understanding. You know that that thing is going to feel very geschmack, very pleasurable. So how do you then change that emotion? How do you control the emotion? What you do is you change what you think about. You think about something else. And as you think about something else, what happens is you're depriving that emotion of the air supply and it will soon vanish. It's like choosing not to allow the soul to wear this outfit, and then it will turn into the off position. For example, it's like when your laptop is shut. It doesn't matter what's going on Facebook. If my laptop is shut, I'm not being influenced by whatever data is being sent down that stream, because Facebook is still doing Facebook. But me, David, I'm not connecting with that because I'm not engaging with the garments of the internet, which in this case would be my laptop. It's off, it's closed, it's shut. What am I doing? I'm doing something else. I don't know. I'm pushing my kid on the swing, right? So what I'm doing is that I'm choosing to don or divest the garment of the soul. You know, this is a very empowering concept to realize that our thoughts don't have to be products of our mind and heart, that we actually can control our thoughts. We don't just think about what I happen to be thinking about. I think about what I choose to be thinking about. There's a beautiful story of a chassid of the Maggid of Mezrich. He was a contemporary of the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya. And he came to his Rebbe, the Maggid, and he asked him, Rebbe, how can you possibly expect us to control our thoughts? How can you teach us this wisdom that says I can control my thoughts? I can't control my thoughts. I'm thinking about all sorts of things all the time. Do you know how many thoughts we think a day, by the way? Do you have any idea how many thoughts we think a day? You want to take a wild guess? So I always thought it was 50,000 thoughts a day. In preparing this course, I came across 6,000 thoughts a day. And they say that those who say that it's 50,000 thoughts don't have what to rely on. But I realized, you know what? Whoever wrote that 6,000 was probably not ADHD like me. And that's why they said 6,000 thoughts, because they think it's slow motion. But for the rest of us, right, we're moving in high speed. We're thinking 50,000. So there's a lot of thoughts going on, but how can I possibly control them? So the Maggid of Mezrich, his Rebbe, said to him, if you want your answer to your question to control your thoughts, you're going to have to go and talk to Reb Zev Wolf of Zhitomir. You're going to have to go visit him. He'll give you the answer to your question. And so the chassid gets into his wagon and he travels across Ukraine and he gets to Zhitomir, and it's late at night. There's a blizzard going on. He knocks on the door. He's so happy to see the light is on. And he can see in this little hut with the light on, with, the candle, he sees through the window, I guess, that the chassid is there 3-4 feet away from him and he's reading a book. Great, the guy's awake. Fantastic. I'm not going to have to spend the night out in the cold. He knocks on the door. No answer. Knocks harder. No answer. He sees the guy. He's like, oh, he's shouting at him. How does he not hear me? And the guy, completely oblivious, completely ignores him. After about 2 hours of leaving his guest in the freezing cold outside, the chassid eventually comes calmly to the door. He opens up and he says, oh, welcome to my house. Come on in. You should warm your frozen bones. What are you waiting outside for? When eventually the guy gets back to his senses, he says, before I ask you why I came here, I'm here on a mission. The Rebbe told me to ask you a question. I need to understand, why did you allow me to stand out in the cold for 2 whole hours during this raging blizzard? Why would you do that to me? To which the host now says, I am the master of my own home. I decide who enters my home, and I decide who stays outside. When he heard that, the visitor said, I think I have the answer to my question. Our minds are our castle. We choose who we allow in, and we choose who we don't allow in. You know how we do this? You know how many thoughts you can think at the same time? Just one. Only one single, you cannot think 2 thoughts at the same time, right? So what do you do if you want to change your thoughts? How are you supposed to do that? You just change the slide. I think Labor Wolf said, right? You just change the slide. So imagine if I told you now, please I want you all, please, not to think about a polar bear. Can you do that for me? Can you please not think about a polar bear? Are you able to do that? This is actually an exercise by the Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky, who says that if you ask people not to think about a polar bear, then the only thing they'll think about is the polar bear. But if I wanted you not to think about the polar bear, and I told you, Charlie Brown committed suicide the other day. You heard about this? Terrible story, right? The voice of Charlie Brown committed suicide. Do you realize what just happened? We spoke about Charlie Brown, and for a few seconds over there, we were not thinking about the polar bear because you were thinking about Charles Schultz or Charlie Brown, and you're like, oh, so I wasn't thinking about the polar bear, because you can only think about one thought at a time. If you can simply empower yourself to realize, I can only think about one thought at a time. Whatever I think about feeds my intellect, which becomes my emotion. So if I make the cognitive choice of thinking about something else, I won't be thinking about what I don't want to be thinking about, and I won't be experiencing the things I don't want to be experiencing. So let's go back to the soldiers for a second. The soldiers of battle. How are they not afraid? We now have the answer. Maimonides, actually, when he brings down the law of Jewish warfare, where he says you're not allowed to be afraid, he says that the sin is not being afraid. The sin is thinking about the war, which inevitably leads you to fear. You see that? The sin was thinking, allowing yourself to think, oh my God, battle, they have this weapon, they have that weapon. How am I going to do this? Am I going to come home? Am I going to come back to my wife and kids? The sin is thinking about the battle, feeding the intellect, which becomes the emotion. But if you choose to divest of that thought, you simply won't be feeding the intellect that becomes the emotion. You're not wearing that garment. This intellect doesn't go outside naked. Yeah.
How does this work with addictions? I mean, certain addictions have physical attributes in your body. Are you saying then that your mind can change that?
Addictions. I think addictions are going to need a medical expert to be able to help people that have tremendous problems. I mean, right now, when we're talking about meditation, is for people that are generally healthy. But when somebody is addicted to a substance which he abuses, they receive this high, whatever they're getting from whatever they're doing. And there's all sorts of addictions that are not just substance abuse, but people addictions and experience addictions, and there's religious addictions, and there's all sorts of unhealthy attachments. I think that if we were able in today's session to at least establish the foundation of healthy consciousness, maybe later we might be able to explore, maybe in a later session, to be able to explore the pathology of our healthy existence, right? But at least for today, let's try to keep it focused on us, and hopefully we're all healthy, right? So, think about it this way. Whatever you're thinking about has a profound influence on you. Do you realize how many times a day you're being brainwashed? Do you have a TV? I don't have a TV. Love it. I don't even use Facebook. I'm a Facebook contributor, but I'm not a Facebook user. I never, ever, ever go on Facebook. In fact, Winston, who's here with us from Indonesia, he's the one that posts my daily class onto Facebook. I don't go there because to me, it's something so toxic. It is so incredibly toxic. I don't think any human being in the history of the world, well, Facebook's only, 10 years old, in the history of Facebook has ever finished a Facebook session and said, I feel wonderful. Right? I don't think it ever happened. You always think about someone else that has a better vacation, a better wife, a better life, a better car, a better this, a better that, a better the other, right? Facebook brag book, right? You don't ever feel good after going to Facebook, right? So what I'm saying is that if you have the television on, and you're just listening, if you're falling asleep to the television, if it's in the background droning out there, then what it's doing is that it's putting subconscious, subliminal advertising in your mind. Do you remember when Coca-Cola was doing that? I think it's illegal today. Subliminal advertising, that they would have this slide on the movie screen and the movie reel that was so fast your human eye didn't see it. But it catches you. Your brain sees it, but your eye doesn't capture it, right? And after the show and the intermission, everybody went out to buy Coca-Cola. It's subliminal advertising, brilliant, right? Because this is your unconscious thought. right? It's so fast, right? So coming back to our sadly being brainwashed, when you have the TV blaring, the social media, the endless stream of Facebook or whatever you're on, which is constantly, in the barrage even if you don't have a TV, by just the advertising all around us, the billboards and the signposts and the text messaging and the spam and God knows what else comes our way. We're constantly inundated with messaging, and they want us to believe it. And guess what happens, by the way? When they tell you enough times, this is Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propagandist, may his name be blotted out and erased. He said, if you say a lie enough times, it becomes the truth. Why is that? Why is that if you say a lie enough times, it becomes the truth? Why is it that if you say enough times that, the gas companies they care about nature and the earth? When you fill up your gas, right? They tell you in the little video, they say, we have scientists and we love the earth and we're so caring about nature, right? Then why are you doing gas? Like, what are you doing, right? But because they show it to us, it becomes our thought, even if it's subliminal thought, and we start to feel like, yeah, of course they care about, we start to have these warm, fuzzy feelings about the organic, earth-loving oil companies, right? Because what we think about is actually having a tremendous impact upon us. And it's time now for us to take action and control what we allow into our castle. Because when we do so, what we're doing is that we're changing the course of our emotions. We too can be like those soldiers, where we don't allow the fear to come into us. And I want to share with you a beautiful letter that came from the third Rebbe of Chabad, the Tzemach Tzedek. He, in 1820s, he received a letter from his mechutin. That means their children married each other, right? So his mechutin sent him a letter in which he said that he felt powerless about his health and he had no choice but to pray over his mental anguish. This is the letter that the mechutin wrote to the Rebbe in the 1820s. He feels so despondent about his medical situation that he has no choice but to pray to God to help him feel better about himself. And the Rebbe's response to him was amazing. It's an amazing letter. I want you to see it inside. The Rebbe said to him, you don't need to pray for that. The Rebbe said to him, you don't need to pray to God that you don't feel despondent. All you need to do is change what you think about. Change the slide. If you just change the slide of your cognitive thought, you won't feel despondent anymore. Don't pray to God for something that you could do yourself. Let's take a look at this letter. You're going to see it, okay? It's page 14, text number 6. Even if we are emotionally afraid, we are able to divorce our thought, speech, and action from that emotion. The essential thing is not to contemplate or discuss the fear at all, but to do the perfect opposite. Don't think or speak about the fear, the garments. Immediately upon letting go of the thought entirely, the fear will dissolve on its own. At the very least, it will become instantly dormant and not felt in the body. Then, over the course of several days, it will completely dissolve to the point that it will not enter our mind at all. You're starving it of oxygen. Removal of the thought leads to dissipation of the fear. Why? Because emotions are entirely reliant upon intellectual focus for their existence, which requires active thought. If you don't think about it, you're literally pulling the plug on that emotion. Therefore, by removing our thought from the matter, the intellectual power is withdrawn from the emotion, with the result that the emotion ceases to be activated. All this is based on what we learned earlier in Tanya, that the emotions are derivatives of thought, of intellect. When the intellect is not powered, is not on, then the emotions don't flow. It is worth training yourself, said the Rebbe to his mechutin, to remove all negativity, for we must rid ourselves from all fear, including justifiable fear, like the soldiers going out to battle. As I wrote, this is certainly true in your case where there's nothing to worry about whatsoever, thank God, in terms of your health or your financial situation. So this is how we can reach control over our emotions. The Rebbe gave this directive to thousands of people that asked him for advice in just the same way our Rebbe. He said, just change your thoughts and you'll change your emotions. King Solomon said what Judith said earlier. You said before that you speak it out. There's actually 2 interpretations of the verse in Ecclesiastes. Well, it's actually Proverbs. Proverbs was written by King Solomon. And in the original Hebrew, he says, a worry in the heart, you should yashchena. So one interpretation is a worry in the heart, speak it out, which is what you do, right? But another interpretation, which fits beautifully with what we're talking about, is a worry in the heart, throw it away. It's another interpretation of the Hebrew, right? Just throw it out. That's all you need to do. If you could literally throw it out, what's happening is that you'll be starving that emotion. So what happens when somebody calls you and they're trying to sell you a insurance on your car? Have you ever gotten these spam calls? I've got about 1,000 of them in the past 2 weeks. I don't know. They must be obsessed with my car. I don't know what they want from me, but everybody's car. It's not just me. I thought they were all calling me. So what do you do when they call?
Hang up.
You hang up.
And
So you
block
got-
the call.
and-
You gotta block it, right?
You got to block it, but I got 1,000 blocked numbers now. They keep on coming. I don't know where they're coming from, right? So what happens is when somebody calls that you don't want to talk to, what do? You just go, well, you show this to your kid, my kids, they're like, Tati, what are you doing when you go like this? Like, what does that mean? I'm like, I'm hanging up the phone. They're like, no, but you hang up the phone like this. They don't understand what this is. You know, it's like when I show my kids, can you close the window, please? And they're like, what are you doing this for? They don't understand. You want to close the window, you go like that. You know? So you want to, how do you shun a negative emotion? Just hang up the phone. Just hang up. That's it. That's all you have to do. But now you can't just not think about anything. You can't not think about the polar bears. What do? Think about something else. What are you going to think about? So our sages tell us, keep a positive thought handy. Keep a positive thought in your back pocket. Picture of your granddaughter, a picture of your wife, your spouse, your husband, a memory of your happy place, something. Keep a happy thought handy. And that way, whenever you start feeling stressed out, instead of feeling, oh my God, that's the end of my day now, I'm not going to be able to recover from this until next week. No, I'm not allowing this to happen. I'm the master of my house. I'm not going to allow this awful person or awful black energy into my house. I'm going to keep it outside. Thank you very much. I'm going to hang up the phone, and that's it. Nice and easy, right? So another way to do it, by the way, is as the Rebbe continues in that same letter, is that he says, keep a Torah thought nearby. Let's take a look at that idea, page 16. The primary method of removing worrying thoughts from your mind is by redirecting your mind toward other matters. You can replace them with thoughts of necessary material matters that bring you joy, and you can contemplate God's Torah that delights the heart. The latter is best achieved through creating a fixed study schedule of daily Torah study, which is particularly effective with a study partner. Think about this for a moment. You want to keep a happy thought, right? But what do you think about normally? You think about your daily experience. You know, you think about what you did today. Imagine if every day you started off the day with a power hour of Torah study, something inspirational, uplifting, something that that picks you up, right? So for the rest of the day, you're like on a high, like Judith described when you had Labor Wolf a few weeks ago. For a whole week, you felt uplifted, right? So when you're able to start off your day with a little bit of Torah study, what happens is, hopefully it's a good teacher that's teaching the Torah study. If it's not, then you'll probably be sleeping, right? But if you're able to start the day with some inspirational Torah study, then what happens is that suddenly you have something to fall back on when you're feeling unstable during that day. When life knocks you off kilter, you know, you get some bad news and you're like, oh my God, instead of dwelling on it, as soon as you realize that I'm dwelling on a negative thought, you say, no, I'm pulling myself back into the meditation, into something meaningful, positive, uplifting, and good that I was studying this morning. And I want to encourage everybody, especially many of our students here on Zoom, to join me daily. We give a daily class on YouTube, youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. We give a daily Torah class in higher consciousness. We just finished a magnificent course called If God is Good, Then Why Do Bad? If God is good, then why can life be so bad? It's a book that I'm publishing, God willing, this week, and we'll hopefully have it ready for next week. But I encourage you to join me. Join me in daily Torah study. And you don't even have to do it live. You can do it later. Just join us on youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. There's people that come here live, there's people that come here that listen on Zoom or YouTube, or they listen later. And if you're able to do it that way, you can start your day with a positive message. My wife, Hannah, gives a Torah class every day for 3 minutes a day. 3 minutes every single day. You can also find it over there it's on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and whatever else she does. Winston is a webmaster here. Thank you, Winston. But what she does is she gives a Torah class in 3 minutes a day. It's women's Torah study. It's great. And she's got a following from around the world. You can actually study Torah for 3 minutes a day and have something to keep you going. With me, it's 30 minutes. With her, 3 minutes. She knows how to say it short and sweet, you know? For me, it takes a little longer. So the idea here is to make a routine of positive thoughts, and not just as a reaction to the negative thoughts. So don't just have your positive thoughts as backup when you fall into a pit, but to have a positive thought to start your day out right? And this is not only applicable to the clothing, to the garment of thought, but even to the garment of speech as well. How often do you find yourself speaking about negative things? Not just thinking negative things, but speaking or doing negative things. You know, in the Farbrengens of the Rebbe's Farbrengens, which are the gatherings that the Rebbe had with thousands and thousands of Hasidim around, many times you'll see them singing, like singing and dancing and clapping, and it looks very, very intense. It's like, like this, and everybody's joyous. And what are these guys doing? The Rebbe would always encourage people to be joyous. I don't care where you are. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're doing. Be happy. Because if you're able to be happy, then what you're doing is that you're controlling, you're moving any negativity out, you're moving positivity in, and that's going to make you into a happier person right away. But now, friends, I hope I'm not running out of too much time of you, because what I want to share with you right now is a sensational, novel teaching of Kabbalah. What we've learned so far is something which is not that complicated about Jewish meditation, how we can control our emotions. We've done that. We discussed it. Nice and easy. We've learned about the soul, how it works, and the garments of the soul. Beautiful. But what we're about to go now in the continuation of the same letter is that the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, teaches us that positive thinking doesn't only change your mood, it actually changes your reality. It changes what happens to you. Let's take a look at the words of the Tzemach Tzedek here on page 17, text number 8. Text number 8, page 17. It's a continuation of that same letter. And in here, he's talking about why you have to be positive. He says you have to be positive, first of all, to get rid of your negative feelings. Don't pray to God to get rid of your negative feelings. You can do that yourself. But now another benefit of being positive is that if you be positive, then happy things will happen to you. Take a look. In this way, a spirit of joy and good-heartedness will descend upon you from above. I say this on the basis of a teaching I received from my holy grandfather of blessed memory, who shared an insight authored by the Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezrich, into the verse, like a person's appearance upon it from above. This verse from Yechezkel, the prophet Ezekiel, is the way we look at things is the way God reciprocates to us. When you're positive, God gives you blessing. When you're negative, God gives you curses. The Maggid would read the verse this way. According to the feelings a person displays down here in this world, like a person's appearance, so is the nature of that which rests upon the person from above, upon it from above. In light of this teaching, my grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, did not permit me to sing a melancholy tune during the evening prayer. After I had completed the prayer, he explained his reasoning for objecting to my choice of melody, and he shared the above insight in the name of the Maggid of blessed memory. Let me explain to you what's going on here. This is very, very beautiful. The Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, the founder of Chabad, passed away in 1812. In January 1812. It was a Saturday night. And as he was this giant of a spiritual leader was passing away, he was running away from Napoleon. His grandson, the author of this letter, was sitting in the room and he was praying the evening service, but he was doing so with a meditative, melancholy tune. His grandfather, the Rebbe, stopped him and he said, "Don't do that. Don't daven in a melancholy tune, because if you daven in a melancholy tune, you'll be bringing negativity upon us. If you pray in a positive way, then what's going to happen is that you're going to be bringing positivity upon us, blessing upon us." Now, the next piece, which I'm about to share with you, explains it all. The next piece comes from the Zohar. The Zohar is the founding text of the Kabbalah. And it actually explains to us how this principle works. It's from this week's Torah portion in the Kabbalah. It goes like this, text number 20. This is probably one of the most incredible texts that I've come across in recent years. Text number 10, page 20. Come and observe. Our world is always ready to receive the spiritual flow that emanates from above. The upper world provides in accordance with the emotional state below in this world. If the state below is joyous, if we are joyous, then correspondingly abundance flows from above. But if the state below is one of sadness, if we are sad, then correspondingly the flow of blessing is constricted. We are therefore directed, serve God with joy, because mortal joy elicits corresponding supernal joy. If you want a miracle, be joyous. If you want a disaster, be depressed. Whether you say you can or you say you can't, you're right. Either way, you are correct, because the world above is parallel to the world below. The energy we output is the energy we input. This is a basic principle of science. I believe it's called the every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I'm not sure what the name of that law is, Newton something, but point being that it's Wolff's law. Thank you, Alan. Conservation of energy. Energy cannot be destroyed. I think it's like, whatever. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you. You're an engineer. Okay, so point being here is like this. Is that, friends, we're not just blips on the radar here. We are the fulcrum of the universe. We human beings are the apple of God's eye, and God looks to us for how he's going to respond. When we initiate with positivity, he reciprocates in kind. When we initiate with negativity, he reciprocates in kind. We're more powerful than we ever realized. What the Rebbe was saying to the Rebbe that Tzemach Tzedek was saying to his mechutin, it's like, you can't afford to be negative. You know why? Because if you're going to be negative, then all of that stuff is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I want you to think for a moment, how much of your conversation, your daily routine, conversation is negative? How much of it is doom and gloom, and the economy's tanking, and the president doesn't know what he's doing, and this is a problem, and that's a problem, and this is not going to work, and the grandkids, oh my gosh, forget it. Think about, if you talk about the grandkids like that, then that's what's going to happen. But if you talk positive, this doesn't mean flippant. It doesn't mean naive. It's a very subtle, powerful energy concept. That the energy we put out is the energy we put back. It doesn't mean that somebody with pancreatic cancer is going to have happy thoughts and everything's going to work out fine. But it does mean, I'm not saying that we can fathom God's mysterious ways, but God gives us a clue into how he operates here. He's giving us a clue, and it's worth our while to try it out. I'll tell you, I live my life by these principles. And they're so incredibly beautiful to see the goodness and the joy flowing in rebound. This is why Chabadniks are always happy. We're always joyous. Hasidim in general, we're just always happy. Because we know that we're not just happy because we're naive. We're happy because we want happy. In order to experience happy, you got to give happy. Right? And that's this incredible piece of Kabbalah, which is right here in text number 10 on page 20. In slightly different terms, just to put it in a slightly different angle, we're created in the image of God, I mentioned earlier, right? So God has his 10 attributes of expression. We have our 10 attributes in which we were created mirroring God. So in just the same way, you can pick which channel you want, right? You got the TV, right? You got Fox and CNN and ABC and NBC and whatever the channels are, right? Which channel is going to be influencing you? Well, it's your choice. You're going to pick the channel that you want. So when you pick your channel, that channel is going to flow and influence you. So too, when it comes to Hashem's, to God sending us blessing or lack thereof, which of the 10 attributes, these are the 10 attributes here on the screen. When we pick an attribute, let's say of kindness, then that reciprocates an attribute of kindness in the image of God. When we pick an attribute of severity, that reciprocates a flow of severity, kind calling unto kind, deep calling unto deep. That is the Kabbalistic meaning of being created in the image of God, that we are extraordinarily powerful. Our mindset is so important, not only to control our emotion, but also to change our reality, because as we just learned a moment ago, as below, so above. Positive brings positive, and the opposite, I don't even want to say it, the opposite of positive brings the opposite of positive. You see why I'm doing that, right? Okay, good. Let me just wrap it all up here together, guys, with this very exciting conversation, where the Baal Shem Tov takes it just one step further, just one nuance further, the Baal Shem Tov takes us. And he says, not only do our feelings influence what happens to us. Not only do our feelings influence or initiate a reaction, a likewise reaction from above. Feel and you just think. Even that thought initiates a like flow from above. And I want you to see that last piece over here, page 21, text number 11. This is the words of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism. He quotes King David, the psalmist states that one who trusts in God will be enveloped in kindness. We can infer the reverse as well. One who is constantly anxious of punishment associates themselves with strict judgment that can lead to negative consequences, God forbid. In line with the verse in Isaiah, their fears I will bring to them. We become attached to whatever we contemplate. If we contemplate matters associated with severity, we become attached to judgment. If we trust in God's kindness, our souls will become attached to that kindness, and we will indeed be enveloped in kindness. Where we conclude here today, friends, is that our thoughts influence not only how we feel, they control how we feel, and they can be switched at will like a garment. I'm never wearing that suit again, or I'm always going to wear that one. Not only do our thoughts control how we feel, but our thoughts actually change our reality. Even if we don't feel those thoughts, we're just thinking positive. So if you're facing a medical crisis and your doctors aren't very optimistic, the mere positivity of your thought, that alone, now this is not even religious in nature, but just merely thinking, emitting positive energy is what causes positive energy to come back right at you. Because every action has an equal and opposite reaction. This is scientific principles, which we're learning now in the context of the Kabbalah, that we are created in the image of God, 10 attributes, mirroring 10 attributes. In the words of the Zohar, that beautiful piece of Zohar, as below, so above. The world below is reflected in the world above, which follows it. On a very practical level, I encourage you to adopt an attitude of joy, even if it's not real. Fake it till you make it. And then you'll attract joy. I encourage you to start off your day with an attitude of gratitude. In our morning prayers, we begin with thanking God for our ability to see, our ability to function, to move, to get dressed, and all these beautiful blessings, which I don't have time to go through right now, but you'll see them in the appendix of this class. You'll see they've broken down the meditations of each of the morning daily blessings, which I hope you will find meaningful. To be able to begin the day, not even religious, but if you're on this side of the grass, when you wake up in the morning, you're already ahead of the game. You got so much to be grateful for and thankful for, and that joy will beget further joy, more good news, more yeses. It's going to keep on flowing. In closing, we've learned today the three steps which I want to encourage you, which we've learned today. Number one is that we spoke about observing your thoughts. You are not the victim of your thoughts. You are the master of your thoughts. Number two, we spoke about filling our minds with positive thoughts, whether they're just plain happy thoughts or Torah thoughts. And third of all, I encourage you to meditate daily on your joyous, happy, positive, and Torah thoughts, so that way you can direct your feelings that will follow suit. Let's just summarize with a brief video.
Lesson 1. Do you mind the surprising powers of Jewish meditation? 1. Meditation is an authentic Jewish practice that plays a large role in Jewish life. 2. We have control over our feelings and have the capacity to overcome negative feelings and experiences. 3. We have the ability to be in control of our thoughts and can choose what we think about at any given moment. 4. Our thinking feeds our emotions. By getting rid of negative thoughts, we cut off negative feelings. 5. Meditating on positive thoughts develops a positive mindset and positive emotions. 6, positive meditation actually impacts the world around us and elicits a positive response from God, which shapes reality for the good.
So this concludes lesson 1 for tonight. I want to thank everybody for joining us here in person and on Zoom. And I want to say to you that I would love to hear your comments, your questions, your feedback. Please do send me an email to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. And if you haven't yet registered for the course and you'd like to do so, please let Ashley know so she can order the textbook for you in time for next week. To all of our friends on Zoom, it is so super special to know that we can connect live and on Zoom. If you're not here next week, you can still join us on Zoom. The link will be sent out. It's so wonderful to be able to study with you all. I hope you feel uplifted, inspired, and empowered, and more conscious and more joyous to keep that energy flowing for the whole week to follow. Thank you very much, everybody. Shalom. We'll see you next week, God willing, Tuesday, same time, same place.